2023 was a weird year for the Cincinnati Bengals, Alex White, where even when Joe Burrow was healthy, he had the appendectomy in the preseason. It never felt like Burrow got fully acclimated to the season. Where the Bengals get off to this start where they're 0-2. They get clocked at Cleveland. They lose the home game to Baltimore. They beat the Rams where they had to beat them in week three, and then they got annihilated in Tennessee, 1-3. All right, they get it back to 5-3 with some good wins mixed in there against them. They won at San Francisco as a 7-point underdog. They beat Buffalo, and then the wheels came off. And then Joe Burrow got hurt. And they actually played all right with Jake Browning in there, got it back to 8-9. They end up 9-8, finishing last. But then they had this weird offseason where a lot of guys their contracts come off the books, and you see in the departures, they traded Joe Mixon technically, even though that was really going to be a salary dump if they didn't trade him. Tyler Boyd signs with Tennessee. DJ Reader goes to Detroit. Awuzie leaves. I didn't even read that. Jonah Williams, who'd been a staple on that line, goes to Arizona. They had the question marks about T. Higgins after tagging him. He will play on the tag this year. They had Zach Moss. They revamped their secondary, but it all comes back to number 9. That's all it comes back to. It comes back to Joe Burrow and his health to me, Alex.
It is definitely about his health. Remember, he had the calf issue, and then the wrist thing is a little bit nerve-wracking because it's never happened to a quarterback before. So I know they say he will be 100% back, but we still have to see what happens there. I really don't understand why they did get rid of all these skill players when that group got them to a Super Bowl and worked so well together. So I'm curious to see how this goes without Joe Mixon and Tyler Boyd, but not a huge drop-off to Zach Moss from Joe Mixon. Mixon did catch 50 passes, went for over 1,000 rushing yards and 9 rushing touchdowns, 3 receiving last year. So they do have to make up for that. But all in all, you're right. I mean, there's a lot that falls on Joe Burrow and his health. And then on the flip side, their defense was not good last year. So we're going to go over some of the changes we saw there as well, trying to fix their secondary because that was definitely their weakness. But still, a lot of question marks for me to just throw this team as the second favorite here in this division when this is a stacked division and double-digit win total.
So just going a little bit one by one on the changes. You brought up Moss. Moss for Mixon, I think, it's a slight downgrade, but Chase Brown, who was the backup last year, I expect a leap. And then I expect this to be more running back by committee. Whoever's the hotter hand is going to get the majority of the run with Moss and Chase Brown. They also have Travion Williams as well. They have a whole stable of running backs now. They replace Tyler Boyd with a combination of Trenton Irwin, who we saw a year ago. Charlie Jones will probably get a little more run at the wide receiver position this year after being really a punt returner only last year. And then they draft Jermaine Burton out of Alabama, who you would expect, if he is able to grasp the offense, you expect him, and it will be that clear number 3. Tight end, honestly, they've always been weak at tight end in this era. They've had a bunch of guys like cycling through Uzama, who had a really good year to year. They made the Super Bowl. Hayden Hurst, who was effective. Now they signed Mike Gesicki as well, who we didn't have on the additions because we didn't have room. You also have Drew Sample still there. There are a lot of pieces that don't jump off the paper, but they're good players. And you look at the schedule and the win total, and you mentioned it. 10.5 feels a little aggressive for what Cincinnati is. But, Alex, we've talked about this all offseason long. What do the Bengals have? They have a 4th-place schedule. And they get the Patriots in a cross because of that, when the other 3 teams in that AFC East, I think, are all going to be in the playoff mix. You also look at the rest of their games outside of the division. They get the absolute gift of getting Carolina as a cross game. What an amazing gift that ends up being. And they cross with Tennessee. I know Tennessee destroyed them last year, but they got the greatest draw you could possibly imagine. That's 3 games as opposed to even playing a 3rd-place schedule. That's 3 games that they're going to be favored in and should win all 3 of them, Alex.
Well, and it is tough. I mean, especially when you saw what this team did with a backup quarterback in Jake Browning and still finished the season with 9 wins. So I understand from a book standpoint, couldn't really set it much lower with the easy schedule as well. But still a lot of question marks. Still, I mean, I'm not that high on them just yet. I still need them to prove some things.
This is just looking at the history with Burrow. Of course, 2020, they were nowhere close, blows out his knee. 2021, they come completely out of nowhere, win the AFC Championship, and almost win the Super Bowl. Of course, Aaron Donald makes the amazing play to put that game on ice for the Rams. The year after that, they're one late shove away from being in overtime against Kansas City in the AFC title game. So, for me, when Burrow's been healthy, so Burrow, this season 5 for Joe. The 2 seasons Burrow stayed healthy, they were in the AFC title game in both of them and in the Super Bowl in the other one. I don't want to be in a blanket statement of it's as simple as Joe Burrow stays upright, the Bengals are going to be one of the elite teams in the AFC, but I'm pretty much in that camp. Burrow's been the number 2 quarterback for me this entire time. I know there's been a lot of Josh Allen noise. I've always preferred Burrow over Allen. I just think he's a more consistent player, and quite frankly, he's done more with less, even though the Cincinnati skill position unit is very skilled. So was Buffalo's over the last few years. When push comes to shove, I think they're winning this division. If Burrow stays upright, and especially with Baltimore's offensive line questions, they should win this division. If Burrow has any sort of injury issues, that's when this becomes a little bit tricky. Because Baltimore, we know, is very talented. Cleveland was in the playoffs a year ago, and the Steelers, even though I think they're a 7-win roster, they're probably winning 9 or 10 games because it's Mike Tomlin. But I like that plus 170 on the division. I think that's the best bet here. I think just the only thing that I need to be proven is that Joe Burrow can play a whole 17. That's the only thing that I need proven. I think this roster is good enough, but I don't know if he can play a whole 17. That's the only hesitation I have.
So remember, go back a few months to college basketball, and that offensively challenged Iowa State team was my favorite team to win. I am all about defense, defense, defense. All 3 other teams in this division are very good defensively. Here's some numbers to go over from last year from the Bengals. They allowed the 2nd most yards per play last year of any of the entire NFL. 21st in points per game. Worst passing defense last year, 32nd. 8.1 yards per attempt, 12.3 yards per completion. Both of those were last in the league. Rush defense, 4.7 yards per carry. Only 2 teams gave up more. But on the positive side, I do have to bring this up. They were a decent red zone team. They were 10th in red zone scoring. So that is something they can build off of and get better. But all those other numbers are just too much for me. With this, especially in this division, I mean, this is the black and blue division, right?
It was at one point.
Yeah.
I don't know if it still is. I think they're a little more finesse than they would like to acknowledge at this rate.
Cleveland Browns, though, I still think of them. Pittsburgh Steelers, I mean, they won as many games as they did because of their defense. And then the Ravens, of course, have a great defense. So that's the only thing that really blocks me. It's really tough between Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson of who has the best quarterback in this division, because we have seen Joe Burrow win in the big games where we still have question marks with Lamar Jackson. Mm-hmm. But yeah, defense for me, I'm not taking them to win the division.
Yeah, I just the piggyback on the defensive thing real quick, and that is, look, it's a genuine concern. Even the year they made the Super Bowl is a genuine concern until they kind of did what the Chiefs did. They found themselves at the right times of the year, and they did it back-to-back years. I mean, remember, I know there were offensive line injuries going into that Buffalo game. They were a 6.5-point underdog in that Buffalo game, the second go-around in the playoffs, and won that game going away, and just an absolute beatdown in the snow. Defensively speaking, I like how they've reinvented their safety position. I thought their safety position was awful a year ago, and they now bring Von Bell in. They bring Geno Stone in. They just are better at safety. Corner, yeah, I'm not a huge Cam Taylor-Britt guy. I'm not a huge Mike Hilton guy. I get that, but I think you'll see a little bit of positive regression on that pass defense. It is hard to finish in the bottom 5 in the NFL pass defense back-to-back years. And I think part of that, I know the run defense was reasonable, but I think just because DJ Reader was there, and even though he battled injury last year, you didn't want to run into him. Sheldon Rankins, another guy they added this offseason, good player, not DJ Reader. So I wonder if that pass defense takes a big step forward, but that run defense would be the one that goes a little bit backwards, but doesn't fall backwards enough. Also, too, I know Baltimore is the best kicker in the NFL, even though he wasn't a year ago. And Tucker, Evan McPherson, I still is a reliable kicker as well. So I'm in the camp that the Bengals and the Ravens are both double-digit win teams. When it's all said and done, I just like Cincinnati slightly more because I like the quarterback more. I don't think 8-1 to win the MVP is a good enough number on Joe Burrow right now. I'm just throwing that out there. I think he needs to be double digits to start considering him. The only problem is, look at the beginning of the schedule. I think they'll torch New England week 1. And if they go to Kansas City and beat the Chiefs week 2, that number is not getting any better for the better. So it could be the peak. 8-1 could end up being the peak.
I remember the storyline, right?
Oh,
Him
yeah.
coming back after both injuries last year. And if he has a great year that we know he is capable of. Do you want to bring up the coaching staff? Because
Absolutely.
Here's another reason why this is definitely
New OC.
one of the best divisions. I mean, this division is stacked with good coaches. I do think Zach Taylor is a very good head coach, very creative on the offensive side. Seen that with Burrow and company. Dan Pitcher is the new OC, but just like with Baltimore and their defensive coordinator, he has been in the system, been with the Bengals for quite some time. And then I'm going to mess up Lou's last name.
Anarumo, who
6 years now.
Who quite frankly, I'm surprised Arizona didn't hire him 2 years ago instead of Gannon. But look, Anarumo, again, you mentioned it last year, struggle for the defense. I really do expect positive regression for Cincinnati's defense. Again, this is a division with multiple playoff teams. The two teams we've talked about, I expect to both be in the postseason. The next two teams are a little more interesting, which will get Cleveland tomorrow and Pittsburgh on Friday. But for me, Cincinnati to win the division is my favorite bet with the Bengals. That would be the way that I would look to play it. Win total, I guess you probably have to win more than 10.5 in order to win the division, but I'm not laying $1.25 on over 10. That's just not happening, Alex.
No, and I need to really look through that schedule a little bit more. But that plus money going under is a little tempting because, I mean, a 10-win season is good for almost any team.
Yeah, I just...
So with the hook there?
Just looking at that schedule, Alex, I think this schedule is a joke more than anything. Kansas City is a difficult game in Arrowhead. But if we've learned over the last few years, maybe getting Kansas City early in the season is not a terrible thing. You have the division games. All those are tough. We know that. But after that, at Dallas, I don't think that's as difficult as a game as some will say. You get Philadelphia at home, who I think is the toughest team they play in the NFC this year. I think this schedule is just a gift more so than anything. That's why it's juiced to the over more than anything, because the schedule is, I mean, look at this, just going down the line, other than the divisional road games and the game in Kansas City, other than maybe Dallas, they're going to be favored in every other game the rest of the way here, more likely than not, assuming Joe Burrow's healthy, which is the big assumption here, Alex.
Correct. I mean, Patriots are good defensively. They could surprise you in the first week. There's a couple that they could end up losing there.
Cincinnati, by the way, 9 week 1 right now against the Patriots. Currently the biggest favorite on the board in week 1. And hey, I'm not saying I wouldn't bet New England getting to all those points in week 1, Alex. Not saying I wouldn't take that.
There we go. Yeah.
Don't think Cincinnati will be losing outright, at least opening the season. Even though we got Gerard Mayo basically saying Jacoby Brissett's the most pro ready yesterday. We're gonna have there'll be a lot of interesting training camp notes that come through over the next few weeks. Well, I'm Jeff Parles.
And I'm Alex White. Thank you for watching this clip of Sports by the Book. Please like the video, comment, and subscribe.
We live stream the show right here every day on this channel. Also, you can catch the podcast version on your favorite podcast platform.
All the links are in the description below. We appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.